Further debate? The member from Essex.
Thank you, Speaker. You know, I had the pleasure of listening to the very excellent speech given by the Minister of Natural Resources earlier, and I learned a lot from that speech, and I had the pleasure of listening to other speeches as well, as well as the disjointed diatribe from the member from Hamilton West, Ancaster Dundas. And I just was handed this very good piece of information. And, you know, we often say that our Premier, while he has a political stripe, he's willing to reach across the aisle and work with anybody of any political color and cooperate if it's to the benefit of the province of Ontario. Quite remarkably, and by coincidence, today, in the province of British Columbia, the Premier, David Eby, a new Democratic Party Premier, not of our political stripe, not of my political stripe, but a Premier from the New Democratic Party, has introduced legislation which is virtually the same as the legislation that we're debating tonight in this legislature. Now, that's quite a different development, right? A PC government in Ontario and an NDP government in British Columbia introducing similar legislation for the purpose of protecting their workers and their industries and unleashing the great economic potential of their provinces and unleashing the great economic potential of this confederation for the benefit not only of their province, but of everybody who resides in Canada. And I think that's something very notable, and I think it's worth noting, and that's why I've noted it. I think it's really good. Now, here's another interesting fact. I hope I've got my numbers correct, but the members from Northern Ontario would know the numbers better than myself. I know that the... Oh, well, we'll try. I've looked this up, and I've looked this up, and Northern Ontario consists of approximately 808,707 square kilometers. It is 88% of Ontario. That is something that I think a lot of people in Ontario don't know. And the Ring of Fire consists of approximately 5,000 square kilometers. So the Ring of Fire consists of approximately less than 1% of all of Northern Ontario. Less than 1%, if I rely on these statistics. Now, that means if you took a giant shovel and you dug up the entire Ring of Fire, all of it, all the entire Ring of Fire, all 1% of it, that would leave 99% of Northern Ontario entirely untouched. Wow. Did you realize that? And that's a significant fact, because some people will tell you, oh, if we develop the Ring of Fire, horrible environmental things will happen and the entire Northern Ontario landscape will be destroyed and it'll descend into the 9th level of hell as described by the author Dante. Remember that guy, Dante? The member from Mississauga Lakeshore remembers Dante. Great author.
He was alive.
Yeah. And so it's simply not true, because, of course, the Ring of Fire only constitutes 1% of that vast, vast area called Northern Ontario. 99% of it would remain entirely untouched if we developed the entire Ring of Fire. And that is also a fact which is notable. And here's another interesting fact, because I do like interesting facts, and I like to share them with my fellow members of this provincial legislature. Here's a list of countries, and they have something in common. And I'll read the list to you, and while I'm reading the list, maybe somebody might be able to figure out what they all have in common. So here we go. Here's the list. China, India, United Arab Emirates, Singapore, South Korea, Mexico, Kenya, Nigeria, Thailand, Indonesia, Malaysia, Vietnam, Panama, Saudi Arabia, Bangladesh, Sri Lanka, Russia, Egypt, Brazil, and Mauritius. That's a list of 20 countries, and they all have something in common. And I haven't heard anybody shout it out yet, but...
Special economic zone.
Well, there you go. The whip, the government whip, knows exactly what they have. And all of those 20 countries have legislation for special economic zones, all of them. And so, of course, that begs the question, if these 20 countries can have special economic zones, well, then why can't Ontario have special economic zones, right? I mean, really, do you really think that we should be outcompeted by any of these 20 countries? They all have special economic zones. We should have special economic zones too, because it's not as if we're not competing against them. We have to compete against them. That's why we need special economic zones, and if they can do it, certainly we can do it better. We have the knowledge, we have the skills, we have the training, we have the workforce, we have the organization, we have the leadership of the best premier that you could have in the province of Ontario. We could do it better than them, and we will do it, and we will compete, and we will be successful, because we're going to have special economic zones. Now, I've listened carefully to all of the speakers in the opposition. As you notice, I do listen carefully to them, because every once in a while I invite them to consider their words, and sometimes they consider their words. I even invite them to think about the question before they answer it, and sometimes they do and maybe they don't. But anyways, this is what I'm getting at. The reason I mentioned that was because if it takes 15 years to open a mine, then it's going to be 15 years that other people's special economic zones are in operation when ours are not. And they're going to have special economic zones, and they're going to have critical minerals, and they're going to have the development of their resources, they're going to have the development of their military capabilities, and they're going to have the development of their economies much faster than ours. And we don't want that to happen either. We want to be competitive in the world market. But I have listened carefully to all of the objections from the Liberal members of this House and the NDP members of this House, and it is absolutely clear that they have spelled it out very, very clear. They view special economic zones with trepidation, concern, fear. Some of them have used language that I would not use in this legislature. They've used language like tending toward corruption and other things that I would not like to use in this legislature. So I want to tell you, Speaker, right here, right now, you're going to hear it from the member of Essex. I promise every single member of the NDP caucus and every single member of the Liberal caucus that I will not nominate any of their ridings for a special economic zone. That is a promise they can take to the bank. I will not nominate their ridings. I will not inflict a special economic zone on their taxpayers. I will definitely want one for my taxpayers. I definitely want a special economic zone in the county of Essex, because I know what special economic zones will do for job creation, investment. We could probably get rid of property tax.
It's very encouraging to see the House get so animated at 3 minutes to 6 on a Thursday. I just want the taxpayers to know they're getting full value here. So let's get done, and I'm going to hand it back to the MPP from Essex.
Thank you, Speaker. But if one of them changes their mind, and decides that a special economic zone might actually be good for their riding, I want to warn them right now. I'm going to hold them to what they said today. I am going to hold them to all of the negative words that they said about special economic zones, and I am going to tell them, but you said that you didn't want a special economic zone. You said special economic zones were bad. That's what I'm going to tell them, Speaker. I'm going to remind them of their words. I'm going to remind them that they didn't want special economic zones, that they didn't want the job creation, that they didn't want the economic development, that they didn't want the investments in their riding, that they didn't want to unleash the great economic potential that we can have in the province of Ontario, that they didn't want that for their taxpayers or for their constituents. I am going to remind them. Where that lands, I don't know, but I will be here to remind them. And with that, Speaker, I would like to thank all of my caucus colleagues for the very wise words that they spoke today. and I will be supporting any request that they make for a special economic zone for their taxpayers, because that will be great for the province of Ontario. Thank you, Speaker.